Okay, let's talk about sermon titles. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, or at least it's humorous to those of us who are preachers and pastors of churches. To be driving down the street, passing by a church, and there on the outside board of the church, there'll be the name of a sermon that it'll say this Sunday's sermon, and it'll have something like considering Calvinism or the theology of God. And, and every time I see that, I get tickled because this is basically a billboard. These boards outside, these marquees that are outside of churches are designed or put there to get people's attention. And the people are hustling and bustling by in their cars. I mean, how many of them are actually going to look over at the sign and see us see basically an advertisement that says this Sunday sermon considering Calvinism? How many of them are going to say, yeah, that's something I want to hear? Well, not very many. And once again, it shows how preachers tend to think about their world rather than the world of the listeners, the potential audience, either their church members or their potential church members. We've got to think outside of the box. We preachers tend to be interested in all these theological subjects, and that's why there's something wrong with us when we move out of being a regular member of a church to the pastor or the preacher of a church. And therefore, our thinking begins to totally change from what we used to be as members of the church to now some theologian or some theological mind that we think that we should convey to people. But the reality is a sermon title is really nothing more than what they call in copywriting circles or advertising circles, they call it a hook, something that's going to hook the listener into saying, wow, that's interesting. I need to listen to that. I need to know more about that. And so I've never been much of a title guy. I've never promoted titles like on the marquees outside of my church or the signs. I've never been one to do that because, again, I've never really had a great deal of creativity when it comes to putting together a sermon. However, I have learned over the years that the sermon does get, or the sermon title does get the listener's mind going. And if you promise something in the sermon title that will rouse their curiosity, then there's a better chance of them listening to it. So if you put it, for example, in the church bulletin, when they come in, they're handed the bulletin, they go sit down and here's what the the pastor is going to be talking about today. You really want that to be something that begins to build that curiosity and actually help them to actually want to listen to it and learn more about it. And one of the best ways that you can learn how to hook an audience is by understanding some things that come out of the world of copywriting. Like this guy here, Jim Edwards, he's written a book called Copywriting Secrets. And I purchased it to learn more about copywriting, the skill of grabbing people's attention and holding their attention. Now, I bought this years after I finished seminary. I mean, I finished seminary, over 20 years ago, but I'm ever learning. And copywriting secrets, copywriting skills are just very important. Learning how to grab and hold your listeners or grab and hold their interest. And we can do that within our own titles and building a sense of expectation and curiosity among your listeners. Now, when I read this and look at some of the types of titles he suggests for grabbing the attention of any audience, not necessarily a church audience, but any audience. Like, for example, someone who's trying to get physically fit, and someone is marketing a program for physical fitness. He says that here's a good title suggestion: how to pass your physical therapy test in as little as 2 weeks, even if you can't do a single pull-up right now. you know, and so it gets people's attention by saying how to pass the test, but then it says it gives a promise that's going to make it easier. So for you and me, we could put, if we're going to be preaching on prayer, and of course we want to make sure that these are in line with the biblical text that we're preaching, but we want to do something similar to that, like how to pray in such a way that you know that God hears, but you can do this in as little as 15 minutes every other day. Something along the lines of building a promise, how to pray in a way that we know we're getting God's attention in as little as 15 minutes every other day. Now, you might say, well, I want them to pray every day. And I do too. But the modern day listener today is they're spending so much of their time that they're more willing to give you their money than they're willing to give you their time. So we want to give a big promise, like how to pray in such a way that God is listening. That's the promise. But how to do it with a minimal time investment, 15 minutes every other day. Now you can say how to pray in such a way that you know that God is listening, and you can do it in as little as 5 minutes every day. Something like that. And that can be your opening. You can just start as you begin your message. You can say, I know that our time is so demanded of us, but I want to tell you that prayer is still extremely important in this day and age. And I want to promise you something today. I want to tell you that you can pray in such a way that you know that God is listening to you. And you can do that in as little as 5 or 10 minutes each morning. And here's how we're going to do that. Let's look at this passage together. It's something like that. Now, again, I'm just giving you an example, but you want to understand that the title is important. The title of the message, even though I've never been a real big title guy, the title of the message promises to get their attention. And if you promote it before the sermon, then you really want to make sure that it's written in such a way that it promises something that they're going to get by listening. And it's going to be something that's not going to require a great deal of time investment from them, or it's going to require not very much investment of anything other than not just their time. But you want to make sure that you promise to deliver something that they're going to be interested in, because going back to this prayer example, every Christian wants to pray. If they're truly a Christian, they want to talk to the Lord. But a lot of times they're just distracted by life. They feel like, I don't know how to pray. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm saying the same thing every time I pray to the Lord. So these are some things that you can add into your sermons. How to pray in such a way that you're not repeating yourself every time you pray. How to pray in such a way that you know you're connecting with God without repeating the same prayer every day. Now, see, that's something that people are going to want to listen to, because one of the biggest frustrations that people have in prayer is that they feel like every time they pray, they're basically saying the same thing. Bless me, bless my friends, bless my job. Thank you for giving me this. Thank you for giving me that. And they don't pray, or they stop praying, or they don't pray as much because of that. But if you say how to pray in such a way that you know that you're connecting with God without repeating the same prayer every day, then that's something that many of them are going to tune into. So when it comes to titles, be careful to not just say, let's think about Calvinism. Today I want to talk to you about prayer. These types of titles are not going to grab anyone's attention and hold it. What you want to do is offer a promise and then a way for them to enjoy the benefit of that promise without them feeling as though they've got to reinvent the wheel and give up all this time and put in all this energy and effort. You want to present it in such a way that they're glad to listen to it, and they're hungry for what you're going to say based upon the title itself. So hopefully this has been helpful to you.